I would never rape you. That's one of the most mean things you could ever say to a girl strangely. And it seems like a nice thing to say. I said it to some girl and she took offense to it. But she antagonized me. I just said, I'm not gonna rape you. You know, like just trying to make her feel comfortable. And she goes, why not? I said, because you're not pretty enough. I kicked her out.
People tend to not want to go on the record for various reasons.
The reason I came forward is because I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
This whole scheme has been based upon Evan Rachel Wood doing everything to destroy Brian.
Ultimately, if somebody makes a lot of money, they're given the license to do whatever they want.
The institutional defense that is always used by the music and entertainment industry is we didn't know.
It's one of the first times that people are trying to hold record labels accountable for the alleged actions of an individual.
In 2015, Manson wasn't a cover subject anymore for Rolling Stone. He'd been dropped by his major label, Interscope, in the late 2000s. But then he came out with probably his best album in maybe 5 to 10 years. So we commissioned one of our contributing editors, Eric Hedegaard, to find out, can this somewhat faded rock star get his mojo back?
I've made it clear in my life that I know how to phrase a sentence that it can't be taken out of context if I don't want it to be. But I'm being very casual with our conversation because you know that I'll stab you and I trust you to not be stabbed.
I remember Eric told me that Manson sounded like he was still living this performative sort of existence. He wanted to be seen as this idea of a rock star, but if you're a shock rocker who's been doing it for, at that point, 20 years, you have to keep shocking people.
The most dangerous people were women, if you let them be. Not that I'm sexist, misogynist maybe, but not sexist, because I love women. I just don't love what, it's just like when you say, I love tits, I just don't like that they're attached to. Some people say that, not me. I mean, I may have said it, but I love women, I just don't love being in an unhappy situation.
If I had heard the tapes at the time, I do wonder what I would have thought. It might have been something where you could say like, oh, it's just Manson being Manson. Part of his, performance art.
I'm not into rape whatsoever. It's called a struggle snuggle. I prefer to mentally break a woman down to the point where she has no other choice but to submit to me. But rape, it takes all the fun out of shit. Rape's for cowards and for lazy people. And we do rape.
In 2015, I was still very much in denial. I hadn't cried about anything that had happened. I was never able to cry about it. And it had been years since our relationship ended. But I did a film called Into the Forest. I had to do a pretty brutal rape scene. And that was the first thing that sort of shook some things loose. After I'd done that scene, people started asking me about sexual assault, sort of wondering how I knew so much or how I was able to go to certain places. but it was still really hard to admit what had happened.
The hashtag #MeToo has millions of women sharing stories of abuse. The hashtag was tweeted nearly 1 million times in just 48 hours.
The year of Me Too,
We want justice! We want justice!
I was just kind of like, wow, it felt like finally powerful and abusive men are being held responsible.
Any comment, Harvey?
It wasn't just about men like Weinstein.
Regardless of whether Harvey Weinstein goes to jail, we still have work to do to end sexual violence.
It was about survivors and being able to come forward.
You feeling powerful today?
It's time not just to say that victims deserve respect and dignity, but to show it in deeds and allow them to be heard.
If you come for one of us, you come for all of us.
Yes means yes and no means no. No matter what we wear, no matter where we go.
We welcome everyone to today's hearing on the Survivors' Bill of Rights Act. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give before this committee is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
And then in 2018, I was approached about testifying in front of Congress for the Sexual Assault Survivors' Bill of Rights by somebody that knew what I had been through. And I felt like, if you're not going to speak up now, what are you doing?
Ms. Wood, if you would, thank you.
This past year and the massive movements such as Me Too and Time's Up have been extremely empowering and validating for survivors, but also incredibly painful. While no one had to tell me that rape was such a worldwide epidemic, to see the flood of stories so similar to my own was both freeing and soul-crushing.
It was the scariest thing that I ever did. All I could think of was I wish my mom was here.
My experience with domestic violence was this: toxic mental, physical, and sexual abuse, which started slow but escalated over time, including threats against my life, severe gaslighting and brainwashing, waking up to the man that claimed to love me raping what he believed to be my unconscious body.
I told my story, but I was still just like so terrified to name Brian because he still felt like he had all the power and I had none. And I still thought I was the only person that he'd done this to.
Sick rituals of binding me up by my hands and feet to be mentally and physically tortured until my abuser felt I had proven my love for them.
I heard Evan speak. It came across as a recommendation on my YouTube. I was wondering, what is she talking about? She didn't say his name. I knew that they had gone out, so I'm thinking, is she trying to talk about, you know what I mean? So it seemed to me like that's who people would think she's talking about.
In this moment, while I was tied up and being beaten and being told unspeakable things, I truly felt like I could die, not just because my abuser...
It seems so ludicrous. The whole concept of him wanting to be aggressive towards a girl would be antithetical to the way he even thinks.
So I went numb, and soon I couldn't feel anything. I wasn't alive. My self-esteem and spirit were broken.
I first heard Evan speaking about sexual abuse and that she was a victim. She didn't accuse anybody of anything. She didn't say, but I knew in my mind, I'm like, wow, I'm sure she's talking about Manson.
What makes me more hurt and more angry than the actual rape and abuse itself was that piece of me that was stolen, which altered the course of my life.
I was shocked because from the outside looking in, it just looked like a normal relationship between two people. Yes, he was older than her. But certainly in Hollywood, that's the de rigueur.
Thank you, Ms. Wood.
I didn't know how the world was going to respond, but I had a feeling that I maybe opened up Pandora's box a little bit. And it was shortly after that I sort of started seeing these women like pop up either in my Instagram or in my email or in my DMs. And I had named him, but they knew who I was talking about because similar things had happened to them. And suddenly, it was like, how could I have been this blind? Of course I'm not the only one. Of course these things don't just happen to one person. Of course there's a pattern, of course. And that's when the doors sort of blew off for me. That was the moment that changed everything.
I am flypaper for damaged women, admittedly. And my first rule is A, don't make beats that confuse strippers. 2, don't make a movie without naked women in it. 3, don't fuck crazy bitches. And, you know, all of these rules are not always abided by me.
My name is Jason Newman. I am the news director for Rolling Stone. I've been here for about 9 years. Before the Me Too movement, there wasn't really a lot of journalism focused on sexual assault in the entertainment industry. Since then, there's been an increase of these types of stories, unfortunately, but I think they're important to tell.
I hope my testimony explains and paints a better picture of what rape is like and also the aftermath.
After Evan Rachel Wood described an unnamed ex-boyfriend who she claimed committed acts of sexual abuse, there were rumors that it was Brian, but she never actually named him. Then in 2020, Metal Hammer asked him point blank, are these rumors that Evan's talking about you? And he hung up on them. His rep sent a denial. Fast forward to February of 2021. Evan Rachel Wood goes on Instagram and says, the name of my abuser is Brian Warner, also known to the world as Marlyn Manson. He started grooming me when I was a teenager and horrifically abused me for years. I was brainwashed and manipulated into submission. I am done living in fear of retaliation, slander, or blackmail. I am here to expose this dangerous man and call out the many industries that have enabled him before he ruins any more lives. I stand with the many victims who will no longer be silent.
The reason I came forward is because I don't want this to happen to anybody else. And I thought, how can I get him to stop? How can I get him to stop? But people are wondering why victims choose to go on social media or choose to put themselves out like this. It's because they feel like there's nowhere else to go.
So Evan comes out, then about a dozen other women come forward. They accuse Warner of sexual, psychological, mental, and emotional abuse. And we start seeing a pattern. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy.
Marlyn Manson is about transcending morality and sexuality. No boundaries, gray areas.
Certain statements he'd made in the past when it comes to treatment of women and misogyny, a lot of us, myself included, understood that as typical rock star behavior. But after the allegations come out, we decided, all right, now it's actually time to start an investigation. We wanted to solve that puzzle. What is blustery rock star persona and what is hiding in plain sight? The first thing we do is look into all the claims against him. But we also look at the pro-Manson videos that are coming out, try to learn what that side is as well.
This is my argument, and the argument that others are making. Why do we doubt the accuser's stories? What is the problem with the accuser's stories? And why do we think that Marlyn Manson is innocent?
From there, we build this list of sources going back 30 years, both on the accuser side and then on the Manson side. We reach out to every single accuser we can find, to all of the accuser's friends. On the other side of it, we tried to speak to as many people in Warner's camp as possible, to every band member, to every manager, to every associate, to every assistant, Of course, we asked to interview Warner. He declined to speak. As a lot of these cases go, people tend to not want to go on the record for various reasons. Their fear of retaliation or retribution. But the breakthrough happened when Esme Bianco, an ex-girlfriend of Brian Warner, who was also an actress most popularly known as Roz from Game of Thrones, came out with allegations against Warner a couple of weeks after Evan Rachel Wood.
In 2009, she says Manson asked her to star in a music video he was making and flew her from London to LA.
He told me that we were going to shoot it all on flip cam so that we could do it ourselves. And he locked me in his bedroom and he tied me to a wooden prayer kneeler. I was half naked and he beat me with a whip and he filmed it.
Over the following 2 years, she says their relationship became sexual.
He would hide abuse by doing it during sex, basically. He always went too far, the biting. That was 100% non-consensual. And he would bite me till I was black and blue.
Why continue to go back?
I thought he was in love with me. I did not understand that what was happening to me was very, very wrong. And because he was incredibly manipulative.
How long did it take you to realize that's what was happening?
7 years after I left. It's terrifying. I'm still scared of him.
Esme speaks to us September of 2021, and she was our first major on-the-record interview with one of Warner's accusers. It just literally changed everything. And then we spoke to a number of other survivors that decided to come forward. Sarah McNeely, who had dated him, and Brian's former assistant, Ashley Walters.
Whether you were a girlfriend or an employee, you were going to be subjected to a lot of abuse, a lot of psychological games. He had these goblets that he drank absinthe out of. And I remember him throwing it at a girlfriend. She was crying, and he kept saying, "You look so pretty when you cry," and wanted me to take pictures of her while she cried. It was his way to make sure he could trust me to do what he said. He was the puppet master pulling the strings, manipulating everyone's relationship with each other.
From there, we spoke to Ashley Morgan Smithline, who had dated him in the past. She had previously done an interview with People magazine.
I was afraid for my life every single moment I was with him, but more I was afraid that he was going to get rid of me and find someone else.
The women involved were telling us one of their most intimate, horrible experiences, and that's just an enormous responsibility to have. But after about 9 months, we felt ready to publish it. But up until publication was very, read it again, read it again, read it again. Is there a period out of place? Is there a quotation mark? Let's just make sure everything is said. And eventually, on November 14th, 2021, we published a story under the headline, Marlyn Manson, the monster hiding in plain sight.
I don't think it's like all a hoax of the Me Too movement, but he presented himself as this dangerous part of society that wants to cut itself and do drugs and live a lifestyle that is unsafe. If you don't eat meat, you don't go to a hamburger store. If you're gonna date the Antichrist superstar, what do you think he is?
I saw a lot of things in there that I know he didn't do. I just know it's not him. There's other ones I'm like, that might be very true. You know, it's case by case. Like, I'm not a legal expert, so don't quote me on that. But, you know, I think he's got a definite case, you know? It's gonna be tough for them to prove.
I don't know what to say other than he had sex with these women. So they were intimate relationships. They were entirely consensual. And for at least a decade after the relationships, no one claimed they were not consensual.
I struggle to speak to you today.
They were all false claims. This whole scheme has been based upon Evan Rachel Wood doing everything to destroy Brian, not only professionally, but emotionally. When Evan Rachel Wood identified her alleged abuser as Brian, within 24 hours of these allegations becoming public, his record label dropped him, his talent agent dropped him, and his manager dropped him. In these times, he knew he was getting canceled based upon what were horrendous and false claims.
Mr. Manson denied the accusations on social media, saying, "Obviously my art and my life have long been magnets for controversy, but these recent claims about me are horrible distortions of reality. My intimate relationships have always been entirely consensual with like-minded partners. Regardless of how and why others are now choosing to misrepresent the past, that is the truth."
It's the playbook. When you don't have the truth on your side, the main thing you have is, how can I assassinate the character of the person accusing me as much as possible and make them as unreliable as possible?
Evan Rachel Wood, I think, was quite embarrassed about her actions as a younger girl when she was with Mr. Warner, Brian. Then she started encouraging other women to make false allegations. And then they do that to a mainstream publication. So these completely bogus claims were made because of Evan Rachel Wood.
I know I'm telling the truth, but there's like this narrative that, well, you know, Evan's trying to erase her wild past. She's piggybacking off of Me Too, cancel culture. But anybody who knows anything about PR knows that if you want something to go away, you don't talk about it. So what's more likely? That I'm orchestrating all of this, or that one person has done a lot of really bad things for a really long time?
When I first started hearing about the sexual abuse allegations, I was defensive. I knew him. I was like, this person that I knew, that's not who he is. I thought they got into a relationship with him. There was consent at the time, and now they regret having given that consent. And so now they want to backtrack. And then my ex-husband said, you really need to watch Evan Rachel Wood's documentary. So I watched it, and I found it very disturbing. So much of what she said did make sense to me. The way he drew her in, specifically her being a younger person, she talked about the things he said to her, and the way that he treated her was the way that he treated me at that point. And then it bothered me. Because if all of those things about her story make sense to me, how can I just absolutely, you know, dispute the rest of it? I want to believe that he's totally been maligned, and it's, you know, but it doesn't look good.
I think that my purpose in life was to cause chaos. The catalyst that causes a fucking ripple in the water.
He did go by Reverend Manson for a while. He would go as Mr. Manson and then Reverend Manson. And then as I knew him later on, he just wanted to be called Manson. Evan is not lying. Let's just say that. She is not lying. Just seeing the things that he put her through, I was really infuriated. Everything I had pushed down for so damn long, it just was like a volcano exploded. Why the hell is he still allowed to do this? I mean, why are we excusing this behavior? Somebody needs to stop this. I just thought, I have to do something or try.
So let's go through. Show me what we're looking at here.
So this is the notebook paper I literally tore out from my backpack, my high school backpack. The night that I first saw him perform, there's Manson, and you know, there's no way he didn't know I was in high school.
Bianca met Brian when she was a kid. She was 16, barely 16. He raped her. He continued to contact her over the years, and she was under the influence of his manipulation. Then he sexually assaulted Bianca when she was 19. He is a monster, and we're standing behind her with the legitimacy of her claims, and we want them to be adjudicated in the right place where the truth, truly the truth, can come out.
You had to call the tour manager, and you say the word Eddie Head. That's how they knew you.
Eddie Head.
Yeah, like the Iron Maiden mascot.
So that was
the secret code.
To get backstage.
And these are the... When I first met Karen, I was so scared. But as we spoke, it felt right, you know, I felt, I trusted her. And that's hard for me because I do have trust issues. But she believed me.
Similar to the front cover. Unfortunately, our judicial system is not as effective as it could or should be in holding predators accountable. Only a small fraction of assaults are ever even reported to the police, and steps necessary to bring charges are enormous. It takes so much evidence. But when some of these cases occurred, we didn't have the kind of digital media that we have now that documents the communications. We also have the huge hurdle of that is a tendency to blame the victim, a tendency to victim shame, a tendency to ask, what was she doing? What was she thinking? Why did she stay involved? Litigation is re-traumatizing because survivors are revealing very private, painful experiences, but they're also being questioned on those.
He never met the girl, and I have signed declarations from people who are witnesses under penalty of perjury, who were there at the time of the alleged incidents, who say that her allegations are impossible.
Manson, he's lying. But I'm not surprised. I mean, that's what he does. He lies. But other people still believe him.
Bianca, honey, you could have been something.
Yes.
But instead, you will always be remembered as the girl who lied.
Look, honey, if you're going to come out and you're going to make up a lot of BS claims to ruin an innocent man and take advantage of other women who have actually really suffered and been victims, I think you deserve to be exposed.
After Bianca filed the lawsuit, you start seeing an effort to attack and harass her online so that those survivors who might be likely to come forward themselves will be like, oh my God, I can't take that on.
Give me one of those.
That's what's so remarkable about survivors who do The only reason they are willing to go through all that is because they want to stop the predator and they don't want it to happen to other women.
These women are running around saying this happened in the 90s. In the 90s! The only reason why anyone is taking a second look at this is because of little bitch Wood.
If you're gonna go down this route, like, you're signing up for more abuse. I understand completely why people pull out of investigations, why they get beaten down, why they feel like they can't do this anymore, why people settle. Because it's exhausting and it's re-traumatizing.
So after her documentary, Phoenix Rising, it comes out, Warner sues Evan Rachel Wood for a series of charges, including defamation.
Every time I speak could be another lawsuit. It's more time in the ring with my abuser, it's more time being humiliated, it's more time being slandered. There's a huge part of me that wants to just move on with my life and never talk about this again. But, you know, you go to bed each night knowing that you're telling the truth. And that's a great place to be.
There's news on the Marlyn Manson cases.
Yes, there is. Esme Bianco and Marlyn Manson have actually settled their disagreement.
January 24th of 2023, Esme Bianco and Brian Warner reach an out-of-court settlement. The terms of which are not disclosed, but that case is done. Then in February of 2023, Ashley Morgan Smithline, one of the women featured in Rolling Stone's investigation, recanted her allegations.
She fully recanted.
Yes. Ashley Morgan Smithline, what is wrong with that woman?
Ashley called me. She said, I really want to tell the truth. I feel horrible what's happened. I don't want a dime out of this. Please convey my apologies to Brian. You know, I was persuaded for a minute by Evan that I had been raped, and that was false. I spent 2 weeks with Brian, and they were wonderful, and I wish him all the best. So not only was this made up, but she had been persuaded to bring a claim under the theory that her memory had been repressed and that she's not remembering accurately what happened 10 years earlier.
I mean, it's false. I don't know how Evan would recruit people. Like, it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. You start feeling the strength in numbers and safety, and that's what happened. We came forward.
I would never want somebody to do something they felt uncomfortable with. I know not to put pressure on a survivor to come forward if they're not ready. You just say, if this is something you want to do, I have your back. You do it in your own time. If you're not ready, that's okay. But I don't know what's going on in her head. All I know is it sounded like she was really scared and getting a lot of harassment. From the brief correspondences we were having on Instagram, I could tell during the Johnny Depp trial, she was in distress. She said, look at the hate. I can't handle this, I'm pulling out. She said that to me, you know. So that's pretty clear. People are just foaming at the mouth for survivors' voices to be, you know, discredited or taken away.
Ms. Heard shouldn't be claiming that she's a domestic violence survivor and lying about it.
My sense is the pendulum is swinging the other way. People are looking at these cases and starting to realize that maybe we've gone a little too far with this maxim that you must believe the woman whatever she says, especially when it comes to a woman who acknowledges a consensual sexual relationship and then 10 years later changes her story.
The way it feels right now, being a survivor that's come forward in the wake of Me Too, after survivors have had their moment, it feels like, oh, we've just had a joyride in Dad's car, and now we're home, and Dad's there, and he's like, well, I hope you guys had fun, because you're fucking grounded. Like, and now we're in the period of, I hope you enjoyed your joyride and your moment of power, because now you're really gonna get it. Now we're looking for the lie. We're begging for it. Like, we need something to bring this all crashing down so that we can sort of go back to the way things were, where like, well, we don't really have to believe anybody.
After the Me Too movement, everyone in the music industry talked about music's next, music's next, music's clearly next. And you didn't see it. You didn't see the music industry get the same reckoning as Harvey Weinstein and Hollywood. But one of the lawyers who has recently entered the fray is a lawyer by the name of Jeff Anderson.
Unnamed co-conspirators in this conspiracy of silence, this conspiracy of secrecy.
Who took on the Roman Catholic Church with the sexual abuse scandal.
The lawsuits are piling up against former Bishop Anthony O'Connell. Both men claim O'Connell sexually abused them for years.
And until a bishop goes to jail and hears the clang of the jail door behind him for concealing this, it's not going to stop.
Now he's representing Bianca Elaine and trying to prove that it's not just Warner, it's an entire system that was set up around him that was allowing abuse to happen and profiting off of it.
The institutional defense that is always used by the music and entertainment industry is we didn't know. And so their position is always deny, minimize, and blame. They protect the perpetrator out of profit. It's very simple. Profit. Warner's case is classic in the sense that industry knowledge is so apparent, and not just because of what he wrote, not just because of what he said, not just because of what he purveyed across the globe about his intention and his state of mind. He not only believed it and not only expressed it artistically, he acted out on it.
I think the ridiculous nature of the allegations against the record label belie the credibility of the entire complaint. I mean, there's a different agenda there that has nothing to do with Brian and everything to do with the lawyer making money by booking a bunch of cases.
It's one of the first times that people are trying to hold record labels accountable for the alleged actions of an individual. And it raises a very interesting question of how much did they know or didn't know, and to what extent should they be held responsible?
I definitely saw people around Brian that knew exactly what was going on. There were times I asked people for help. Sometimes they would just ignore me, literally like I wasn't even there. But I don't think the covering up of the behaviors just started with Brian. He's a symptom of how the music industry and a lot of this stuff has worked for a very long time.
The music industry in general is a awful, wretched place. Very misogynistic. There is no accountability, I don't believe. And it's a really sad state of affairs. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you know. But ultimately, if somebody makes a lot of money, they're given the license to do whatever they want.
The lines between acceptable hedonism and criminal conduct in music have always been extremely blurry. that behavior was not only tolerated, but sometimes celebrated by the music industry and by the music press.
I think that the press in general helped build up Manson, for sure, absolutely. He looked crazy and provocative, and he said crazy and provocative things.
But when you're trying to create something that's greater than everything around you, some people are gonna suffer, but that's the price for greatness.
And of course, the music press, in particular, and the press in general, built him up, yeah. He was everywhere, right? He was, on the pages of every tabloid, including on the cover of Rolling Stone several times.
The most dangerous people are women, if you let them be. I prefer to mentally break a woman down to the point where she has no other choice but to submit to me. But rape, it takes all the fun out of shit.
It's impossible to hear him say things like that now and not feel like this is something he actually believed. And that's the really creepy part.
How accountable do you think Rolling Stone should be for the part it played in celebrating him?
Well, let me put it a different way. It's a real mission of Rolling Stones today to go after, alleged bad actors in the music business. And if Rolling Stone celebrated those alleged bad actors before, then we have to go even harder.
Brian has not been given a fair hearing. But I hope that sooner rather than later, people will see that he was wrongfully vilified and is vindicated. We'd love to go to court. Vindication in court is the validation that we seek. The problem is that could take years. And no legitimate promoter will touch him until these allegations are resolved.
If I said I have 5 people in my life that have made a difference in my life or have kind of helped make me who I am, he's one of them. So it's really difficult to have that and then say, oh, he's actually a really terrible person who has been violent and abusive. That's tough. Sorry. I didn't expect that. That was a surprise.
If you want to remain a fan of this person, you don't have to say that we're all lying. You can just say, yeah, I know all this, and I'm still going to choose to listen to the music. You have that choice. I don't think you have to stop being a fan or stop listening to the music, but you do need to hear everything else and know exactly, what the music was forged in.
I'm the third act of any movie. I'm the part where it rains. I'm the part where the person that you don't want to die dies.
Men have done bad things through history. And I'm not saying that's an excuse. But dog will hunt. I don't even know any way to put it. It's like, not that it's fair, not that it's right, and I don't want anybody to be abused or hurt, but I think a lot of people got into relationships with men who were bad men and regret it, and now are trying to find a legal recourse.
Heroes have a very straight line. Villains always break the rules, but they've always been the most interesting characters.
It's so much bigger than just one man and a few victims. This keeps happening, and the system is still the same. Law enforcement, the court system, the media, and we're just gonna keep seeing this happening until the system changes.
I think the system is pretty flawed, but hopefully they have enough to see that it's all true. I think he's a criminal. He should be held accountable. I hope we get justice and has to pay for his actions because he destroyed a lot of lives, in my opinion.
This was never about, oh, I'm just out for bloody revenge and this is just about punishing Brian Warren, because it's not. I really hope that there's a happy ending and that, you know, we're able to be validated. But either way, I really do believe that he's already living in his own private hell. And I got out, he's stuck there forever.